Hey, everybody. Good evening. Thanks for joining us on the yard. It's 8:01 p.m. In the South Bronx right now. And that can mean only one thing. It's time for another episode of The Yard. My name is Richard Bronson. I'm the founder and CEO of 70 Million Jobs, which is the national employment platform for folks with records, along with our new social network app, Commissary Club. Think of it as Facebook for folks with records and their family and friends and anybody else who's interested. We're officially launching this app very, very soon, but nonetheless, you can download it now if you go to commissary.club, and you'll see instructions on how to get a link. And I'd love you to check it out, as many have already. We have a lot of people on the app who are posting stuff and connecting with one another, and we're very, very excited about it. The Yard is a production of Commissary Club. Tonight, Seth is not with us. Seth is traveling, so he sends his regards. I, of course, have the good fortune to be joined with my dear friend and teammate, Divine. Tonight, this afternoon, Divine was a panelist on a really great podcast, I guess you would call it, Michelle Obama's organization, When We All Vote, which is all about enfranchisement, getting people who are traditionally, not registered to vote, to get them to register so that they can vote. And Divine was on with a couple of other folks, including Angela Yee of the Breakfast Club, who's pretty amazing. I'm going to put up a link shortly that really I urge you to check it out, because for no other reason than just to hear Divine talk. He always has important things to say, and he knows how to say it. So Divine, how are you tonight? Good to see
Richard,
you, brother.
Great to be here once again. Another night with the Yard. Thank you to all our guests for joining. Yes.
Yeah, we're closing in on like 50 episodes.
Yeah, man. We've been steady, man. That's a great thing. It's a blessing.
I know.
People still want to see us, man, and hear us. So
Maybe. Who the hell knows? I don't know. I don't understand their motivation.
We grew on them. What are you gonna say?
Yeah, like lichen, like moss. So I mentioned the South Bronx. Before I introduce our guest, which I'm eager to do, I mentioned just now the South Bronx, and why the South Bronx? The South Bronx happens to be where Rikers Island is located, and we all know of Rikers Island. Just about every day, there's more bad news, awful news about Rikers and how bad a place it is. There's a barge that's actually parked on the East River, and it's a prison barge, or jail barge, I guess, and they lock up a lot of people there. And I have to say, I'm very sad to admit that I'm an alumnus of the Vernon C. Bain prison barge. I did time there, and it was really easily the worst time of my life. 5 people have committed suicide while incarcerated on the barge just this year. Another 7 died of suspicious causes. So, I think it behooves us to ask the question, like, what's the problem at Rikers? Why is it one of the most, if not the most, unsafe correctional facilities in the country, which it is? The answer, it's a nuanced kind of situation. It's not particularly obvious, and there's no easy answers here. I mean, certainly there are too many people. They actually have detention holding cells where they put 25 men into, and not just for like an hour or 2, but for months, with one toilet, well, it would have to be an awful toilet if you had 25 men using it. Now, it may be easy to assume that the problem is they don't have enough guards there. But the exact opposite happens to be true. The ratio of guards to prisoners is one of the highest in the country. Counterintuitively, I guess, to me at least, having too many guards has meant, among other things, according to a study, that no one really takes any personal responsibility for anything. Everyone assumes someone else is going to do it, so why should they bother? Additionally, as it's not too hard to imagine, having too many guards or a lot of guards just essentially adds to the violence. Sad but true. Now, the easy answer is, well, we should throw more money at the problems of overcrowding, the violence, the non-existent medical service, the unedible food that, passes for food there. But get this, the city of New York, who operates Rikers, they spend $438,000 to jail someone for a year at Rikers. $438,000. That happens to be the highest cost to incarcerate a person in the United States anywhere. So it's not a question of not having money to spend on the situation. Now, I'm sure there are some responsible professional guards at Rikers. Personally, I never met one when I was there, but I'm sure they're there. But really, sometimes a place is so bad, so evil for so long that everyone just assumes it's going to remain that way, and behavior never changes. And I've been back to Rikers a number of times since I was jailed there, and the experience was uniform every time. There was a stink of violence and waste and misery at Rikers. And honestly, in my opinion, the only way to solve this problem is to completely do away with this rotten facility once and for all. Bring out the steamrollers and just raise this place, because it has no place on earth. All right, so back to the yard. By the way, there's no yard at Rikers, at least where I was. Back to the yard. I neglected to mention before I introduce our guests, we, as usual, are amply helped by the very fabulous Adrian Hatter, who pulls the strings in the background, and she is here, and Amanda, who also sometimes fills in, will be taking over at a certain point tonight. And the reason that Adrian will be leaving us is because today is Adrian's birthday. And she will be celebrating her birthday tonight. She's in Northern California, but she'll be going out to dinner with friends. So I'm sure she would love all of us to wish her a happy birthday. So happy birthday, Adrian. Happy birthday. All right. Our guest tonight is from Brooklyn, and he received a 10-year sentence for a drug charge. Interestingly, he's yet another formerly incarcerated person that, instead of running away from the memories of the awful time when he was locked up, and we'll talk about that, but he's chosen to stick around and try to make things better for his brothers and sisters who are incarcerated or who are returning citizens. He engages in criminal justice freelance writing, and he's the host of a very popular podcast called the Common Ground Initiative. I'll be putting up the link there in a moment. And he soon will be launching his new nonprofit called Felon to Freedom. Live from Winchester, New Hampshire, everybody meet Anthony Payton. Anthony, welcome.
Anthony, welcome, brother.
Hey, hi, everyone. How you guys doing?
We're good, and we're very appreciative that you would join us. Anthony and I met on LinkedIn. Sometimes social media is actually a really good thing.
Right.
and you get to meet some good people, and that's how Anthony and I hooked up.
Mhm.
Anthony, Winchester, New Hampshire. Not exactly like the projects in Brooklyn, is it?
Oh no, Manchester. It is an hour north of Boston. So I'm in New England. It is the biggest city north of Boston too. Definitely not New York. Um, it is a growing place that has a lot of potential though.
Really?
Yeah.
They have good pizza there.
There's one place that gets close to New York, but everything else is it's not what I would call good pizza, but I mean it works for the time being. So
Yeah, war is
It'll hold you over.
yeah. Right.
You have good pizza. Divine lives in Rhode Island. Do you have good pizza there, D?
Oh, absolutely, Federal Hill, definitely, but not New York. New York is my stomping grounds. Brooklyn, actually. So
Oh, that's what's up,
whenever
right?
whenever I get down to New York, man, I love it, man. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, I've been through Providence here and there.
Oh yeah, Providence, yeah, no doubt.
Good people in Rhode Island for sure. Yeah.
I'm hopefully one of them.
Anyway, let's just sort of get to know you a little bit, if we may. You were living in Brooklyn, and a guy's got to earn a living. What were you doing to earn a living?
Well, I was hustling back in the 90s. Doing my ones and twos, turning 3 to 6. As far as most.
Wait. What does that mean? What is ones and twos?
You missed that one, baby. You missed that one. I never brought that one out yet.
Yeah, it is. I made some investments in narcotics at the time. I was around 16 and 19. So that was back in 1995. I wound up, with that lifestyle comes violence, and it usually comes violence because jealousy is a byproduct of that lifestyle. So one of my brothers and I wound up going upstate New York on manslaughter charges, and this was in 1995. And I was born. I'm kind of like an anomaly, born in the projects, but to a 2-parent household. We were indoors a lot, but my dad, he was a Vietnam vet. He wound up catching a heroin habit, laid off from work. So we felt that we were going to, we felt at the time, the quote unquote, going to help the family by, going downstairs and, getting into things. And that turned into doing a bid, which didn't pan out pretty good. But, years later, the thing with that lifestyle also is that it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And it left a taste in my mouth that lasted well into my 30s. When you taste that type of blood in the narcotics game, and what
do you mean it left a bad taste in your mouth?
It gives you that sense of risk that, hey, if things aren't going right for me economically on this level, I can call so and so and get something for 800. And then bring it up to, way up in New England and sell it for 2,400. So it left a bad habit, so to speak, that I'm just, over the last 6 years shaking out of, and that's the reality of it for, the guys that are on the corner or, pitching from a house,
But wouldn't most business people say, aside from the fact that it's illegal, if you can buy something for $800 and sell it for $2,400, that's the basis of a good business, right?
Right, absolutely. And I always felt that the paralegal business, you're dealing with payroll, you're dealing with marketing, so those are transferable skills in my opinion. You just have to be dealing with the right products. You can, you deal with competition a lot differently on the other side of the tracks, so,
sure. So did you have a feeling as you were engaged in this behavior? You mentioned violence. Did you walk around with a gun?
Oh yeah, from my 16 to 19, body armor. I grew up in Tompkins Projects. It was a block from Marcy Housing Projects, and back in the 90s, we had the highest homicide rate in the nation in Bedford-Stuyvesant, and it was an urban war zone, so to speak, for a great period. It wasn't until I started venturing out into New England that I learned that it can be done a different way, because I couldn't show my face as much in predominantly white neighborhoods. So I would have to, pitch from a distance and get the natives to surround me and kind of like barricade me. And I made sure they were good and they made sure I was good, and try to boost the economy, where they were at. And it worked, it worked.
Did you feel inevitably that your life would be impacted by violence? In other words, that you'd be killed or shot or you'd shoot somebody, whatever. Was that just sort of something you accepted?
Yeah, it was. Especially when you're knee deep in it, Richard, it's like you're in this bubble. And, there's two different worlds, like the world that you're living in, and where I see friends get murdered and engaging in gun violence and what have you. It's really eye-opening when you look back on it. But I definitely had those feelings from time to time, But there was always this entrepreneur in me that my dad instilled, so I guess that separates me to an extent, because I have brothers and stuff. I had a brother that just won he just won an Emmy with his crew out in Cali. He graduated NYU in film.
What
and he's out there. Some type of news program. He had a news program going on or something like that, him and his friends, the NYU grad. But, he got the picture of it and everything. So my parents did raise some, kids that were on the right track as well. But my dad would give me his paycheck and say, here, count this money. And I was younger, before I got into drug dealing, he'd count this money. He said, you know what you're supposed to do with that? And I'm like, what? He said, you send these out to bring more back. And that was his boot camp on investing. You know what I'm saying? It's like, he didn't say what to do it with, but he was like, send these out to bring more back. And I'm like, okay, I got it. And so I believe that helped me a lot, even to this day, but my most recent case was in 2013. That's what I just came off of, federal incarceration. So it's like, I've hit every level of incarceration. The only thing left is like a military tribunal. And I don't want to go to, you know what I'm saying?
I don't think they're gonna have
you don't want that. Nah.
Yeah.
For you to get that, it'll be something crazy, brother.
Yeah, it'll be over. But
so let me ask you. First of all, how long have you been out now?
December 10th will make 2 years since I got off that bus from Danbury, Connecticut.
Okay.
Which was where I did my federal time from, and made my way back.
You're still fresh in the mix, man.
Right, and I've had a successful walk, and I believe that is due in part to my support system. Like I told Richard earlier, my brother Chris, he did 18 on that manslaughter. He went to trial and lost. He walked out with his master's. Then he took that master's out of Sing Sing and took it to Columbia. Now he has his master's in public administration. So he was my support system. As soon as I walked out and got on that bus, he was waiting for me in Port Authority with a cell phone, with a plan already on the cell phone and some money. And I made my way to Boston, and then I made my way up here to the halfway house. And
we're going to talk about, let's hold off on your reentry.
Okay.
Because I'm interested in your first day in prison.
Yeah.
In the feds. Okay. Okay, so
the federal case that you had?
Yeah, this is the federal case right now that I just had in 2013.
The first one was state.
Yeah, the first one was state back when I was young. This was like the 90s.
Got it.
And I should note too, my mother died on that bid. I wasn't able to go to her funeral. Right. That'll set the stage for that. Yeah, that'll set the stage for what I say next. But the federal incarceration, it was crazy because, like I told Richard, I'm 3 days into the county. And my fiance at the time, I called her and she said, hey, I missed my period. And, 2 days after that, I called again. She said, hey, I'm pregnant. And I said, this cannot be happening. I'm looking at down the barrel of a federal indictment with a child on the way. My first child too, mind you, at 38 years old. So I'm like, I said, and believe me though, that was my strength, Richard. Divine, I turned that into my strength because I'm like, I'll be able to, see her through her first years in school. I missed 6 years of her life, but it was rough, man. I've had her when she sent the sonograms and the ultrasound sonogram. That picture stayed in my cell, and I looked at that little life on a wall, and that was my strength. I'm looking at this unborn child.
I know the feeling all too well, brother.
Oh man, I'm looking at this unborn child. I'm like, if this doesn't help me recalibrate, you know, and make those adjustments, I don't know what will, you know. So that was
It always
that
takes,
was
it always takes a dynamic, man, to really shift the thinking in the way that you go about,
right.
living, man.
And then in 17, my father was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So I said, oh man.
So
And
how much time did you get in the feds?
10. I did 6.5 off of it because of the you know, the RDAP program.
Yeah, of course I do. I
You know,
took it.
yeah, right away. As soon as I got
I took
arrested,
it.
I said, look, I'm an addict. They said, we don't know an addict that was pushing that much drugs. I said, well, look, I'm an addict. You can't prove that I'm not. So, you know, but
I did the same thing on my last bit. Like, yeah, I did it all. I sniffed everything. Let's go.
Sniffed all everything. So
So when you got, so let me
Mhm.
ask you both. Let me start with Divine,
Mhm.
if you don't mind. You're in prison and all of a sudden you're a father. I mean, all of a sudden, but you become a father, right? While you're in prison, you're not with, the woman you had this child with at her bedside as she's delivering. You're not there to see the baby born. You're not holding the baby when it first, emerges. You're there, to change the baby or feed the baby or watch the baby start speaking or take its first step or go to their first day of school or whatever. I gotta believe that that's gotta really, eat anybody up. Like you just said, if that doesn't do it, you're hopeless. But did you, at a certain point, say or look upon your past life and say why did I do this? Or what could I have done differently? Or beat yourself up for it or something like that? I mean, did you feel that way, D? Like guilt?
Yeah. Well, my son was 3 when I left him first,
Oh, okay.
my first incarceration. But no, I like how you laid all that out because that applies to my brother right here. But let me say this: even though I had got to the 3-year stage, prior to that, I was incarcerated in juvenile, and I had to deal with seeing my son in prison. And when you're living that life at the time when I was living that lifestyle, I was so stuck in survival mode that you almost become numb to like those type of human emotions. You block all that out. So it wasn't a factor. Okay, oh, my son's growing up. Pop's got to do what he got to do to make it happen. Period. And even more so because I got a child. So it's not like I would shy away from the streets. Nah, I'm going full fledged thrust. We got to get busy. I got to get that kilogram. That's going to fix everything. And that's how you see it. I mean, you got to imagine I'm only 18 years old. I've been doing this since 13. By the time I got to the feds, my son's 3 years old, and I'm more like, this is the predicament I'm stuck in. What can I do to balance it? All I could do was write letters and hope that his mother would read those letters to him when he was of age, and he would realize that even though Pops was physically gone and the fatherhood wasn't there, I still cared enough to write these thoughts down. And I write thick 10, 20-page letters and just send them home. You know what I mean? That was my way of balancing that out.
What about you, Anthony? I mean, I felt guilty, for disappointing my family and friends and, sort of disappointing myself, of what I could have been had I made smarter choices. Did you feel guilty? Did you feel,
absolutely,
you wish that you would handle shit different? I mean, your brothers are, one is
Mhm.
a big success, the other,
Mhm.
Got 18 years, and
Mhm.
now he's on the path to great success. So it's
Right.
clearly in your genes
Right.
to do great things, right?
Right. And it's like, yeah, that guilt was it's something like Dee said, you gotta that guilt, I had to turn it around. I had to make it eat it and digest it,
Hmm.
and then turn it into something for the better. Because like my co-parent told me a story where things were tough for her, and she walked from one side of this city of Manchester to the other, almost bursting with the baby. And I'm like, oh my God, and not being there for my dad for his final days, and and even my daughter's brothers who kind of latched on to me after years, when I was that father figure in their life. So all of that all of that pain and it got me to where I am. It got me on the trajectory that I'm on right now. So if it was about taking that pain and that guilt and turning it into like fuel, and that's what I'm all about. It's taking it and turning it into fuel and doing the right thing. And you're never going to make up for that time, but I'm here now. Like I said, my daughter just left the apartment. She just ruined it, called me old. I was watching TV in here for hours and and I'm like, let's bring it on. This is what I need. And this is what I've been sitting 6.5. When I was looking at that picture of her, in her mother's stomach, I can't explain how. Like, someone asked me how I'm doing, and I said, I'm on, there's valleys and peaks that we have. And I'm on such a peak that I know when I hit a valley, I just got to remind myself of these peaks, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful place that I'm in right now,
Whoa.
Honestly, and again, I'm going to ask you both.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't have a child in play, so to speak, if that wasn't something, you hang the picture of her sonogram,
Mm-hmm.
clearly it was on your mind, clearly it may have had a major impact. And D, you had a 3-year-old that you left. Do you believe if they weren't around, you would sort of say, okay, I'll do my time, I'll come back and I'll get back into the life? I'm just wondering how pivotal or how critical the existence of these kids were for you sort of changing, the trajectory of your life, as you put it. Anthony, what do you think, D? Would you be still out on the streets slinging if you didn't have a 3-year-old?
I think some people, they're able to, that dynamic shifts. For other people, it's not enough. Other people, it's still a survival mode. It's still a thing they got to go through. My son was my hope. He was my strength when I was incarcerated. Definitely, like Anthony was saying, definitely got me through the time, because I'm like, yo, I got to get home to him. I got to do what I got to do. But even though I had some evolution in prison the first time I went to the feds, it wasn't enough to break that dynamic of my street life. So when I came home penniless. I came home no support system. I was working at D'Angelo's, like a sub shop, and I was able to get a loaner car from a relative to just use and pay it off periodically in installments, whatever, so I could just do delivery. And that led to, first time I'm doing that, but then I'm like, yo, I gotta get busy. I gotta get back to, who I was and what I do. And that was crime. That was living that crime culture. And that's what would happen for me. But I never neglected my son and didn't handle my business as far as a father. But at the same time I did, because I was still involved with the life. It wasn't enough for me to break free from it. And that wouldn't happen for years to come. So I dealt with recidivism.
Okay. Just to reset the table, we're talking with Anthony Payton, who's been out for a couple of years now. Anthony is a freelance writer, and I've read some of the stuff you've written. You're a good writer. He's got a great podcast, and he will soon be launching his nonprofit, Felon to Freeman, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about that for sure in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What did I want to say? I forgot. We're going to put a link to Divine's appearance on that When We All Vote event today that I mentioned earlier. We partner with Michelle Obama, which is cool, and some other great people as well. So the truth is, there's 70 million people with records, which equates to about 1 in 3 adults, which is a mind-blowing statistic to me, and always surprises people when I say it. They just can't believe that could be true, but it is. Obviously, if we could, get everybody registered to vote, re-enfranchised, and if we could galvanize this community, we could elect any president we'd want. We could certainly elect a congressman in Brooklyn or a senator, you know, wherever in California, because there's so many of us, you know. The whole path, the whole criminal justice arc is such. You go away to prison and then they let you out on supervised release. And one of the, which is another way of saying parole or probation. And then one of the terms of your release is that you may not connect with, meet with, hang out with others who may have a record, despite the fact that these are the only people who understand what you're going through, and having gone through it or going through it, they can offer advice and connections and inspiration and a shoulder to cry on and friendship and et cetera, et cetera. And it's really unbelievable how lonely it is when you get out, because for most, in my case, it was certainly true, and I know in yours, Divine, a lot of family deserts you, and a lot of friends who you thought were friends desert you when they know that A, you're radioactive, and B, you don't have the money and the power and the fun that you once were able to provide them. And
Right.
I've certainly felt that. So you know, to this day, I feel lonely. So out of that sort of desperate need, you know, we're launching this app, Commissary Club, commissary.club, with the specific goal of creating community and connecting people and doing it online and providing resources and entertainment and jobs and all this critical stuff that heretofore didn't exist or wasn't available in one place. So speaking for my team, this is our life's work. You know, I mean, there's a lot of important things to be involved with and to care about, but this is where, you know, we draw our line of what we need to do. So I invite you, please, you know, spread the word, support us, be in our corner, say nice things, speak well of us when we leave the room, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Tell me, Anthony, you had your sentence, and you copped the plea versus your brother who went to trial.
Yep, back in New York in the 90s, yeah, I pled out. Like I knew,
Right. Now,
yeah.
most cases, certainly federal cases, I think something like 96% are pled out.
Yeah.
The reason being is, and this is a case in point, if you take the chance of going to trial, even if you're completely innocent, you know, if they find you guilty, they are going to make you so regret the fact that you stood up to them and, you know, in their opinion, wasted time and resources, et cetera, you know, expressing your innocence, or that they don't exactly have the case right, or they made technical mistakes, or whatever it is. So you copped the plea and you said, okay, I'm not going to fight this. What's the deal I could get? They told you 10 years. Whereas your brother, for whatever reason, he said, no, I think there's another way to do this. I'm going to go to trial. And he got almost double your sentence, right?
Yeah, he got 20 on that case. I think they offered him on a manslaughter back then, like 10 to 20. And he's like, no, I'm not taking that. He went to trial, lost the trial. I got caught like a year later. So, you know, the longer you run, the weaker something gets. And they were, I think it was a 5 to 15 on the manslaughter. Then they went down to, in New York, you would have did about 7 off of it. You know, we go to the parole board, they hit you, boom, boom. But then they went down after everyone pled out. Then they went down to 2 to 6. And I jumped on that like white on rice. I said, give me that 2 to 6. I went to the board after 2. They said, you got to be kidding if you think we letting you out of 2 years for a manslaughter. So they gave me another 2 years, and I did 4 out of that. And I think when I look back at it, I wasn't ready when I came off that bid. I was 24 years old. I was walking around Rikers Island with jewelry and a leather jacket. I got to the state.
Wait a second. I just got to set that image.
Yeah.
If you go to any prison or jail in the United States, the one thing you're going to see is the fact that every inmate there has on one kind of uniform. It's an orange jumpsuit, it's a khaki shirt and pants, whatever, but everyone looks the same. You're saying that when you were in Rikers, you could walk around with jewelry and a leather jacket.
In the 90s. In 1995, you were, and I can't tell you how many people and the things I've been involved in that got cutting their face and stabbed and riots and stuff like that. But I was in there on a manslaughter charge, so I'm like, hey, look, like they're trying to, the first offer they were flirting with 15. I'm like, let's go. Like, so then I got to the state prison, and I'm still laughing and smiling because I got a 2 to 6 on the manslaughter. So I'm, I got a carpet in front of my cubicle. I got a house robe, I got suede Timberlands. And then by the time now don't get me wrong, I got my GED and I took some college courses, right? But I got out of 24 and I was still a little cocky. And I really believe when I look back, I lost my mother, but I look back and I was a bit cocky when I got out, and I wasn't completely where I needed to be, because 5 years later, I wound up catching another drug charge, and then ultimately I wound up catching this drug charge. So when I look back at that, I don't wish I would have got more than that 2 to 6. Don't get me wrong, but I wish I would have had a different mindset when I got out.
So that brings out something we've talked about on the yard a bunch of times. I think the three of us, and probably everybody, who's joining us. And by the way, while we have the Zoom thing going, we're simulcast on Instagram Live and Twitter Live and YouTube. So there's a bunch of people watching there as well. It often comes out. So we all have done time, and can attest to the misery and the boredom and the stupidity, and in some cases, like you were describing, the violence, the bad food, and the not being able to see your newborn baby or your 3-year-old son, and all this other, just awful things to be going through. But many people admit that going away to prison was what they needed, or they got a lot out of the whole thing, despite how miserable and awful it was.
That's right. It's very true.
I'm like, I always hesitate to talk about that because in a million years, I don't want to condone our criminal justice system or to suggest to anybody that going away to prison is, something you want to do.
Yeah.
And yet, I got something out of it. I know Divine did, and now you're saying you did too, right?
Right. And I got more out of it in the federal bid going in at 38 than I did on a state manslaughter bid going in at 20. Big difference. And I'm glad I did federal time at that stage in life, and I'm glad I did state time at that stage in life, because they're two different worlds in some regards. Whereas the feds, I only went in one fed spot, but from what a lot of my homies and people say, is heavy politics in the feds, where in the state it's more physical. The state is in many regards is more physical. There's no big homie and the shot caller thing. There wasn't that when I was in there. You get in a fight, you get in a fight. You don't have to talk to 6 or 7 different people, have like a commission meeting just to have somebody. In the feds, it was a little bit different, but yeah, definitely a little bit different, but you can feel and sense the danger. So it was still very serious. I took advantage of all the ACE programs. I took complete advantage.
Programs are they called?
The ACE and the feds.
I remember I took the ACE programs too.
Yeah.
I did Fed time. I wasn't even aware of that.
That was early. You only did those.
Right.
I went in at 92. I went in 93.
Damn. Oof. Yeah. I didn't go into the 14.
It was still a sweet thing going on, baby.
I heard it back then, man. I heard that.
It was sweet, baby. But the ACE course is the adult continuing education courses. I took the same thing.
Right. Like there were courses in there on investing in real estate. Richard, there were guys like yourself who were
Yes.
teaching classes.
That's who
Like, I
taught me
learned about
my
how
business plan class.
right.
The
Like,
guy from
I
Wall
learned
Street,
how to
old dude. I knew he was gonna die there. Actually,
right. And that's
Big
how I
fact.
learned futures. That's how I learned to trade futures. When I got out, I started trading in the S&P
Wow.
500. I went to those
Wow.
classes. I'm like, okay. And, you know, it was also the mess hall. Like, I went to culinary arts. You know, I spent my whole bid in the kitchen from the front to the back of the kitchen, and I'm in the food service thing now.
That's a lucrative position too.
Right, exactly. So it's like, you know, I took full, I wrote screenplays. Right, exactly. I never had to go to the store.
You know what I mean?
So
Yeah,
let me
you know?
ask you, Michelle, who's joined us, asked a very, good question. She says, do you guys think that the growth you experienced, the insights and wisdom that you gained, could that have happened outside of prison?
You know what? Can I take that real quick first?
Go ahead.
Go.
Yeah, it couldn't have had happened because the way that the projects were set up, poverty is set up. Everybody that lives in those projects isn't confined in those projects. There's no growth mindset. There's no elevation. There's no anybody really trying to go to that next level. If you're trying to go to that next level in the projects, especially during the 80s and all that, during the crack epidemic, you was an anomaly. And I was thinking like that. I was always like, yo, how do I get out of this shit? How do I get out of the, being one of the crabs in the barrel? Not taking my fellow man down, but how do I climb up out of here? So I was always thinking sneaker store, entrepreneurship. I was always thinking stacking my bread. I had to get out of there, man. I couldn't live like that. I didn't want to live like that. However, you get caught in that same cycle that everybody else is doing, and you get lost in it. So prison was exactly what I needed to get my mind in a place so I could build, like being studious, being, researching, studying, and getting myself in that mind frame for later on in my life. But I didn't know I was setting up for later on in my life, which I'm talking about over the last 7 years, where I position myself.
What do you think, Anthony? Could you have gone through those changes and growth on the outside?
I could have at a certain point in my life, but like I said, the survival instinct to where, like walking around with body armor and guns at 16, 18, we went from trading each other video games, knocking on your friend's door, trading video games, to trading automatic weapons. So I love that question, and that's such a valid question, but it's like, I'll age myself a little bit too. I'm going to age myself with this, and anyone over this 40 will get what I'm saying. When I was coming up young, I used to watch infomercials with a guy named Carlton Sheets, right? Carlton Sheets was the real estate mogul.
With the gray hair.
Yeah, I don't remember him. Yeah.
Yo,
I remember the infomercial that late at night for him.
Yo, he was the man. And I really wanted to, I'm like, you know what? Real estate investing is where it's at. There's another guy, John Beck, too. He used to be talking about tax lien certificates and stuff like that. And I used to watch these infomercials like this. I want to be that. I don't want to be the rapper. I want to be that guy, Carlton Sheets, with like 8 or 9 multifamily homes and such and such and such. Sometimes those dreams and realities don't manifest. I had the money to do that on this run. In 2013, when I caught that case, like there was triple deckers up in Berlin, New Hampshire, going for 30, 40 grand. We had that, but it never materialized into me going to get it. I had a little entertainment company, and you get set in your ways and things like that. But to answer that question, yeah, those values can be taught. I would like to see in those neighborhoods more usage of men and people to go down there and speak about it. They're like right out here in New Hampshire, this big Brady Sullivan Towers that, these people own most of the real estate out here in New Hampshire. I would like to see some of these guys come into the inner city and mentor some of these kids. Like, hey, look, this is what this is as far as investing. This is what this is as far as investment. So they give them a vision, a pathway on the way out. So,
I mentioned the statistic or that Rikers, the city of New York, spends $438 grand to incarcerate somebody at Rikers for a year. You would think that with that much money being tossed around, you could, take 100 grand and create something really amazing, where you could learn those lessons. Michelle asked after you guys were talking, do you think that changes in society could allow you to develop, these skills and evolution and wisdom on the outside. I would like to just answer that from my point of view. And I think, knowing Divine, I think it's true for him, and it sounds like it's true for you too, Anthony. The one thing that prison does to almost anybody is it humbles you. It doesn't listen, if you knew me before I went away, I was a guy who flew in private planes. I knew lots of celebrities. I used to
I mean, he owned a club on South Beach in Miami. That tells you enough.
Yeah, in Miami, a nightclub in Miami. I published
Popping Cristal, like, you know what I mean?
I did. I really, that was the life I was leading. And I was the biggest asshole in the world, frankly. And I was the least humble person in the world. And my ego was just off the chart. And when your ego is that much off the chart, you don't even feel like the rules apply to you. Do you have any idea who I am? That would be, I'd say that 2 times a day. I'm not going to wait online for anything. Do you have any idea who I am?
Right.
I couldn't be a bigger jerk. But when you go to prison and they give you a scrub brush and they say, you see those 100 urinals? That's your responsibility.
It's your job.
Cleaning them. It's very, very hard to feel like you're all that.
Yeah.
You have any idea who I am? I would say to the guard. And he goes, yeah, you're another asshole who got himself thrown in prison. That's who you are. That's who I think you are.
Yeah. And then read the fucking number off.
Exactly. And he was right. And I needed that. I needed that smack in my head to really come to my senses and become, a little bit more of a human being than I was. So I think in my case, I have no doubt I would have continued my going down the wrong path unless I faced the repercussions that I did. Do you guys agree? Do you agree, Divine?
Let me say something. So you're coming from a different perspective of what I would come from, because you have privilege in a lot of ways, right?
I do.
You leverage that privilege to get to where you rose to this high level of success, making money, having money. When you come from a perspective of the projects, when you build from nothing, from an 8-ball to to an ounce, to a quarter key, to a kilogram, and you're making all this money, you have ego. But the ego was a little bit different. It's a different type of ego. You know what I mean? I'm the man. I'm the one that calls the shots. I made it from from an 8-ball to a brick. And now I can do what I do. I was always really like a real good dude in the streets, if you would. I made massive money. I was a boss. I did my thing. I was a leader, but I was always fair and I was always good to my people, and I wanted to see everybody eat. And that could be good or bad. That could be good or bad. But my whole thing was, how can I?
That's uncommon, wouldn't you agree?
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
my thing was, how can I get out the streets? My thing was, I just wanted to get out the fucking hood. I didn't want to be in poverty no more. I just didn't want to do it. Some people, they glorify that. They love that. They live in it, and that's what they stay at. Not me. My mom was always bigger than that. But prison definitely did give me a dose of reality as far as, the game that I was playing, especially when I went to the feds. I was like, okay, they're not playing no games with me over here. This is not, this ain't the state where I do a little bit of time and I'll be out.
What about you, Anthony? Do you agree with me that, obviously we have different backgrounds, but do you agree that you got to be incarcerated, you got to be sort of humbled before you have a chance to actually move forward in a meaningful way?
Right. I agree wholeheartedly, because especially this one at 38, this one like kicked me in the ass. Like I described the older bids, this one kicked me. Like I said, I lost dad, had a daughter born, lost uncles, lost cousins, lost aunts, didn't make any of the funerals. Company went down the drain, my entertainment company. Me and fiance split, although she's one of the best co-parents in the world. So this one took a lot out of me. It took skin off me, so that, that humility came in the mix of all of that, and getting messages from my co-parent, hey, such and such said hello, and that type of thing like that. And I'm like, wow, such and such is he's doing his thing right now, in entertainment and what have you. And I should have been there. And look at me now, when I was out there, out there doing what I was doing. So it was a hell of a slap in the face. And, it definitely took skin off me, man. I walked out of there 44, 38 to 44, and it was like, and I guess that's why in my heart, people say I have a young heart, kind of. I'm an old soul, but a young heart, because I gave a total of maybe 13 years in prison, 13 and a half total. And it's like, I'm still, like most people my age, like are kind of like settled in and like, nah, I'm still shooting for things. Like I still want a screenplay to get written. Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah. I have a tech startup.
Yeah, right.
All
Exactly.
of my friends are retired, ex-lawyers or doctors, whatever the hell they were.
For the young guys, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It is. It's a young man's sport.
Young man's game, man.
Young woman's sport.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I mean, sometimes I'm just sort of amazed.
No, but Richard took the bumps and bruises. He's here to, to show and prove that he's doing a great job.
Sometimes I feel like it's a little ridiculous. You ever see like an old guy with a very young woman?
Shades on, Rolex, like.
Yeah, and he's he could barely get out of his Lamborghini, but he has 300 million in the bank.
Yeah, so that youth keeps him going though. You know what I'm saying?
It does. It's hard, but it's sort of embarrassing too. So that's kind of the way I feel. Tell us about the first day. You remember like when you were brought to prison and when I always talk about that. Because for me, it was such a big deal when I made that one step from freedom outside to, into the threshold. And this step is going to really change everything. You remember that?
Yeah. Well, on this one, the familiarity set in after about an hour, living my life, like you said, that freedom and to cross over that line and to go into like, the pit. And it's like, here we go again. Although I was, I don't know, about 8 years removed from any incarceration, it's still a shock. Regardless of how, it's not a shock as if it's your very first time, but it's still a shock to go from, cuff up, strip naked. That's demeaning. If you haven't done that in a long time and you have to go back to stripping out butt naked, that's demeaning. It takes a piece of your soul every time you have to do it. And so going back to that place was, and it might have hurt even more than your first time because it's like going back to that place is, it was just backbreaking, So, but again, going in at 38 with a different mindset, it was like, I need to capitalize off everything that's going to happen on this bid, make all the contacts and connections, learn as much as I can, and get the hell out of here. I calculated my time, Richard, the day I got sentenced. When I got sentenced in 14, I said, I've been down since 13. I can walk out of there with RDAP in 2019. I wasn't eligible for RDAP at the time because of the violence in my past.
RDAP is for a drug program.
Right.
The rehabilitation, I forget what it's.
Drug and alcohol.
But if you take it.
Drug and alcohol program.
You get time taken off your sentence.
Right.
So when people take it, sometimes it's very, very funny who takes it in the feds.
Yeah.
Because they're obviously people who have never ever done anything with drugs, but they had some lawyer who told them what to say. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
So, let me ask you, when you were doing, or when you first got to Rikers, when you first had state time, Fed in general is a safer place. It's a cleaner place. It's run more professionally in general, whereas state and jails are just the opposite. Seth talked about it last week when we were talking about him. Were you fearful? Were there issues? Was there a racial issue? Was there a gang issue? Whatever.
Well, when I first hit Rikers Island, the Bloods were like, it was at the turning point to where they were like the dominant force. It was Blood, Latin King, the guards were still there, the Muslims and things like that. But it was I walked in during that point. And how I carry myself, I usually don't run into a lot of situations. And then, you run into guys from the neighborhood, you get clicked up on a borough type of thing, look at the Brooklyn guys and the Harlem guys, the Bronx guys, or what have you. But I was involved in a few things and saw a few things, I saw how the Bloods formed, and I saw the reasons why, because there were certain houses that, the Hispanic guys, that they would have it, and they were on, those guys at the time were on big BS. You can be a
Big
regular
BS. What is that?
big bull. They were on a lot of
bullshit. Y'all, you can say what you bullshit.
Yeah, they were on big bullshit. Like they were on like
bullshit, man.
Yeah, and like you could be neutral black guy. You're not in any gang, or anything like that. You need to use a phone. You just came from court. You want to talk to your family, and you got to get on the line about 15 other guys because they have the phones and stuff like that. And guys and that's how for the most part, gang war started on Rikers Island. But then when you get, and what the thing about county is this: everything is in limbo with those guys. You don't know how much time you're getting, so you're walking around like guys are walking around on edge. Like I don't know if I'm gonna get 5 years or 15 years. To where you get into the state is a little bit more calm because you have an idea. I have an out date. There's a light at the end of my tunnel. So
Rikers, one of the problems there, among its many, is that's supposed to be sort of a holding prison or jail.
Right.
It's supposed to be a detention. It's not a prison. It's supposed to be, this is where we put people who couldn't make bail, or couldn't have the opportunity, wasn't given bail by the judge, and they're, or they're awaiting to be sent to some state or even federal prison. And it should be a very relatively short period of time that you're there. But there are people at Rikers who were there. I just read an article, on average 600 days.
Yeah.
So what is that? A year and 3/4 for what should be, maybe a 10-day sort of thing if you were in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Right.
Whatever. And so you got people, some of them who never were convicted of a crime.
No.
Some of them who were there because they're junkies and they're going to be drug sick every day. Many of them have mental health problems, and it just goes and at the drop of a hat for no reason, it's peaceful and quiet, and then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose. Right?
All hell breaks loose, and it's like a lot of those guys sitting there in between court dates because the court dates keep getting pushed back. Next thing you know, you're in there for 11, 12 months. And if the judge says, hey, you already count, like, damn, I've been here for 15 months. And the judge says, hey, you want to take this 2 to 4? You start doing the math. You're like, damn, I'll take the 2 to 4. I could be out in 9 months. Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, that's how a lot of the pleas happen, And
right. Brothers just want to get home, man.
They get home. And the mental health, I've seen so many levels of violence, but the worst thing I've ever seen, Richard, is there was an MO house in C-74 at the time. I think at the time when you went to C-74, that was where you get shipped to upstate. So you get sentenced, they move you to C-74 where the adolescents are. And I believe in that building was a MO, a mental observation unit. And that was the worst thing I've ever seen. I looked through the glass, through the door, and this is graphic, and I apologize to anybody seen it, but there was one guy chasing another guy with feces, right? And chasing him around with feces in his hand. And the crazy thing was that the guy who was being chased was looking back, smiling and laughing. You know what I mean? And when I saw that, I'm like, someone chasing me with some shit, I'm not laughing.
I'm turning around and pounding.
Right. So I saw that and I said, wow, man, like this is not a place for these guys, and it's like, it's just so much going on in there, man. And I'm so glad. And I'm grateful to be in a position now to where I can help men and women who are trying to get out of those situations. Because one thing with the feds I learned is this, right? And this is what, to go back to your question of like, or what you said about staying out and being on the right path and, kids. To be honest, what also turned my tide was watching how the feds operate. Because in the state, and Divine, I'm sure Divine, this, in the state, you need evidence. You need evidence. You have to get those drugs tested.
You need concrete, tangible, real live evidence.
I have to test that cocaine to make sure that it's cocaine.
In the bed, you need hearsay.
Right. Hearsay could say, hey, you know what? Richard sold me an ounce of cocaine once a week for a month. Richard, you know you can go to the feds for those 4 ounces.
Well, you going for a whole brick? That's it. Period.
Yeah. And I'm gonna plead out the case.
Exactly. Of course you are.
Right.
Of course you are. Because you know you might have sold 1 or 2, but you have no choice but to take that whole shit.
Yeah. So it's like,
I mean, I don't want to give the impression that I was not guilty, because I was guilty.
right.
In my case.
Right.
Likewise, I was guilty.
But they don't play fair.
Again, I keep going back to Rikers because it's in the news, and you know,
Rikers is dirty. Rikers is dirty. Been dirty. Khalif Browder exposed it.
I was in a where they had me, and I wasn't part of a gang, obviously. So you know, I was with non-gang members, which was probably a blessing. I became friendly with a guy, a mafia guy, you know, and nobody messed with him. And I was known to be his friend. So that sort of saved my ass. But they would say, it would be time for a meal, like it's time to go to lunch. And they would put you on one side of a narrow hallway and march you down hall, while at the same time coming the opposite way were guys who just finished their lunch. And the amount of animosity that existed, and you know, you had to take this perfectly, you had to look straight ahead, you had to have, you know, this don't fuck with me kind of look about you.
Yeah.
But, you know, you couldn't connect with anybody. You couldn't smile at anybody. You couldn't nothing, because at the drop of a hat, the whole place could go nuts.
Yeah.
You could have the entire hallway of 30 or 40 guys just, you know, have this incredible fight where, you know, it's mayhem.
Richard, you just gave me chills. You just took me, you just painted that picture. And it reminded me of bear claws and commissary. That picture, because going to commissary, the bear claw little snacks this big.
I know what the bear claws are. I'm saying.
Yeah,
damn.
And you just took me there with the danishes and commissary, because it was similar. Yeah, it was similar.
The honey buns,
coming and going.
What they call them, the win with the zooms, the win.
About being online and dealing with the whole thing, right?
Right, exactly. Like going to commissary, it was similar.
Yeah, man.
You know,
you
and
your
back
bag,
then,
you got your little list you filled out real quick. You got to put it in and wait.
Yeah.
Call your number.
Yeah, and back then in the 90s, it was you had to go to commissary with people. You know, because the dudes waiting on you coming from commissary.
Crazy.
You know, so like that era was at its worst, you know. So you know that's a hell of a, like, Rikers Island. I don't think anybody should be there.
You went straight to Danbury when you went to the feds?
I went. I was up here. I'm up here in New Hampshire, so I did the counties up here in New Hampshire, holding, and then right to Brooklyn. I went to Brooklyn, MDC for like 3-4 days.
Okay, I've been to MDC.
And then Danbury, and that was my whole ride. I'm glad I only hit one spot.
They shut MDC down, Brooklyn MDC down, or Manhattan, one of them. Yeah,
Manhattan, I believe it was. I heard.
Yeah. Well.
All right. So while you were in prison, were there any, I forget, maybe you mentioned this, were there programs, was there education that you were able to access?
Right, there was, but it wasn't like New York State was giving out free college when I was in. Like I said, my brother walked out of Sing Sing with his master's degree, you know, and in the feds, they didn't have free college, but they had a bunch of programs that were meant to like make your life better. Like I said, with the ACE programs, those ACE programs, if you went to them and you like followed them, you know, it was pretty heavy.
Well, when I went in, they had the Pell Grants, and then they eventually took them out. They passed
They had
the Pell Grants when I initially went. Then they eventually took those out. So people were taking college courses, you know, what do you call it?
Correspondence. The correspondence courses.
The correspondence course, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and getting degrees, man.
Right, and that's so big, Richard, because I'm working with a guy. I'll be working with a guy in Southern New Hampshire University who's trying to put college into the prisons out here, and I believe that's huge for a person to, like, you know, you have to, when you're inside, you have to get gainful employment. You have to get those skills to get gainful employment when you get out, man. You know, so like that's so big. Is the change starts in there for real. The change actually starts
Your
in
reentry really starts the day you first
Right.
go into prison.
right.
The day, yeah, seriously.
And this is going to sound crazy, but I was blessed, right, with the staff that I was around inside of Danbury in particular. Like, I've heard horror stories about COs. I've experienced it on Rikers Island and in the state. But some of these COs where I left were like, nah, look, you worked in the mess hall for 3 or 4 years. Your next step is to get your apprenticeship in these courses. And then you go talk to this guy right here. He'll send it out to the state of Connecticut. Bang, you get your apprenticeship certificate in baking, cooking, butchery, or whatever it is. If you work in laundry, this is what you did. If you spent time working in the commissary, you're a material handler. If you spent time working in the warehouse, I'm going to have this other CO teach you to ride the forklift. So when you get out, you're certified on the forklift.
That's what I did. I did that down in Coleman, Florida.
Exactly.
Man.
So I was around
whipping that goddamn forklift. Yeah,
you better believe it. And so I was around, COs that were like, I don't know if it's because, see, Devon, I wasn't in, FCI Danbury is a low. They have a low and they have the female camps there. So
yeah, I thought it was only for females, actually. That's why I thought it was only for females.
They turned it into a male job. I went in there in 14. It was like I was like the third bus there with men. Wow. So Richard, I was around staff like that, like not. Some of them were assholes. One of them went to jail for getting a woman pregnant out at the camp and things like that. But for the most part,
one of the COs.
Yeah, man, and he was a dirty dog too, man. He was obviously, yeah, man. He
crazy.
But that's what it was, and taking full advantage of everything that they have to offer. So crazy. And then bringing it out into the streets.
Yeah, and in the feds, particularly if you're there for a while, it's not a transient environment. There's everybody's trying to get through it, including the COs. They just don't create problems. You won't have a problem with me.
Right.
I want to get my pension. I want to be done. I always felt like they felt they were as much prisoners as you are. A miserable life.
So Anthony, are you still on supervised release? How was your?
Right now, I'm in such a good place with this guy, man. Like, I hear from him like once a month. I send him a text message, and he's cool with it. He's chasing these young kids out here.
Do you still send in your report? The report you got to fill out. They changed that
because, but yeah, I'm here anyway because of that COVID thing.
I heard they changed it.
Yeah. I don't send. I'm proactive. This is Devon. I say it like that. Like, I don't wait 2-3 months. So every month I hit him. I send him a copy of every editorial that I write. I just got put on the advisory board for the New Hampshire Bail and Bond Fund.
Right.
Although I won't be sitting in cars with guys that are just getting out of jail, but I'm still advise them. Right. Let them know all of that. I think I saw him maybe about a month and a half ago. He wanted to pop up, see me.
We used to file these reports with where you work at. And we had to turn them in every month.
You have
I remember that in the States, kind of like that.
We did it at the feds. I forgot the name of them. I forgot what they were called. They were called some type of report. I can't remember, but
yeah,
I remember that.
I heard they did away with those reports. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You had to swear that you didn't leave the
you didn't leave the state. Yeah, you didn't leave the state. You didn't have firearms.
Yeah.
Like, you had to basically tell them, I didn't do shit.
Yeah.
If you had a firearm, it's hard to imagine that you
you're gonna say, I had a firearm, but
Yeah.
man, I would never let that on, man.
So Anthony,
stay all the time, whatever.
Let's talk about your life since you got out. So number one, probably most importantly, you have the opportunity to spend quality time with your daughter, right?
Oh, man. Yeah, that's so major. That's major, man. And in that halfway house again. I just the luck of the draw. Like, I was in a good halfway house. I took full advantage of it. Worked, became employed, got out of there. We went through a whole COVID thing, got out of there, messed with the futures a little bit. And then I started writing for a local publication that was talking about post-release. And from there, like I said, it took off. Plenty of people loved it. It was on Manchester Inklink with Carol. And then she wound up, parlaying me to what's called the Granite State Collaborative, which is like a consortium of the news outlets in New Hampshire. and Melanie Plender runs it, and she wants to do something on diversity. And so what I'm writing about, I'm writing about diversity, and also diversity in New Hampshire, which is 80%, 80 something percent
Are
white.
you able to earn a living doing this?
Absolutely. Well, it supplements my income. I can't say that I can just sit back and write.
Right,
but
right.
it definitely supplements my income. It gets the name out there. And it builds my resume, and also for voice work at some point that I'm going to be looking for. Because a lot of people for some reason like my voice, so like on a podcast. So I'm like, all right, well, let's see if I can parlay that with something.
Whatever I can do, let's get busy.
Right, let's get it going.
Cut the check, man. Cut the check.
So what is the plan, or what are the aspirations of Felon to Freeman, your nonprofit that you're putting together? What do you hope to achieve? What are the challenges?
Well, we want to get, like I said, centralized, and we need to form these relationships that we've been having with the people that we've been meeting. There are a lot of stakeholders in this city, and a lot of people that want to see us do good. So part of it is we're working on our intake process. We're drafting up the paperwork for the intake process. We're speaking with attorneys. We're building our board of directors. And there's just a few more in our bylaws and things along those lines. So we're at that stage to where we're building it. The name is just running rampant. Like people are like, hey, we heard about you guys. Such and such used to talk with such and such, and he showed him how to get this. And I told the guy how to go to voc rehab. Like he was a butcher. I'm like, this voc rehab, these people will give you tools, and they'll give you, a butchery set. Yeah. So it's like, we're looking to be that one-stop shop.
Do you have a website now, or not yet?
It is in the process of being rebooted. We have to get it fixed.
Okay.
So yeah.
Put up a link if you did.
But we're on Facebook right now, though.
You're on Facebook. So that would be how someone could get in touch with you.
Right. Yes. Felon to Freeman on Facebook.
Okay.
We find it there. Do a like, send a message through there.
On Facebook.
Yep.
We always do this. Let me ask a lightning round question. I don't want you to think about this. I want you to answer with the first thing that comes into your mind. We've been talking very seriously about, some heavy times in our lives, honestly and openly, but, people sometimes find it hard to understand how amidst all of that misery and violence and, despair, there's also times when you're laughing, you're hanging out with your friends. There are things that are just so fucking funny. Or as Divine said a couple of months ago, he said, you've cried so many tears, there are none left. All that's left is laughter.
Right.
Something like that, which is a pretty insightful, heavy thing to say. So let me ask you, Anthony, what's the funniest thing that happened to you in prison?
On this one, I was around a guy that, if you ever seen the movie Donnie Brasco?
Yes. That
was based on him and his family, Italian mob guy. The funniest guy in the world, man. He would grab me by the elbow, and I'm coming out of mess hall trying to pull away from me. He's like, Anthony, I need steaks, I need onions, I need peppers. We're trying to do a big Italian meal, and you're the guy to go to. Like this guy, like he had me in tears when we would talk, man. And that guy, there was so many different guys. Another guy is an Egyptian guy, African Egyptian guy. He told us a story about him being in the woods in Africa, and he said it was him and his brother. Him and his brother were walking. His brother was teasing a monkey with a banana. He told his brother, stop teasing that monkey because he's gonna get upset. He kept teasing him. The monkey ran up into a tree. They watched the tree start shaking. The monkey comes back down with a stick and start beating his brother. The next thing, they get surrounded by the monkeys, and the monkeys start beating them both. And they both had to stay in the fetal position overnight. Now, the monkeys left the small baby monkey to watch them. So every time they tried to get up out of the fetal position and run, the little monkey would alert the older monkeys, and the older monkeys would come and they'll all beat them again. So they had to stay there overnight until the neighbors came and got them. When he told me that story, I was in tears crying, and I had snot bubbles coming out my nose.
Where was this guy that he had all these monkeys?
He was in Africa. He was an Egyptian guy. Okay. Yeah, he was out in the jungle somewhere in Africa. And when he told me that story, I bust out laughing. I said, man, he said he almost killed his brother after that, man. I told him to stop messing with that monkey. But there's so many funny stories and characters, man. It was crazy.
So many characters. What about you,
Yeah.
G? What was the funniest thing you remember?
Man, so man, there was this one dude, man. He was like from down south, tall cat, maybe like 7 feet, and he was like real skinny. And he was just he always used to use this word called ornery. And I had never heard that word before. He's like, oh, I'm just so ornery. And he was like a weird type of dude, but he was like mad funny and cool at the same time. And nobody fucked with him. But like I like quirky people. Like I like to like vibe with quirky people for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I'm quirky myself, but just because I like to like that type of
You are
dynamic. The
Mhm.
dynamic. So, and he was always always he said, I'm just ornery. And he would like make this face and he'd be like dead serious. She used to crack me up all the time. Man. That was like the funniest thing, man, this dude, man.
Mm. That's wild.
For me, and I've told this story before, maybe even last week. So if you've heard it, I apologize. But when I first got to prison, and I had never been in prison before, I didn't know anything about it, what the etiquette is, what the rules are. And there are lots of them, unspoken rules
Oh, man.
that you need to follow. But I was there like the second day and I go, all right, I got to take a shower. So I have a towel. They give you a towel that's like a tissue. It's about the size of a tissue and it has the same absorbent, qualities as a tissue, which is to say it doesn't absorb much. But in any event, I get all undressed. Some guy had given me shower shoes, flip-flops. He said, you're going to need these when you go in the shower. I'd never thought about that, but he was right. And I put the towel around my waist and I walked through my housing unit to go where all the showers are. I didn't think anything of it. I come out after my shower with my towel around me. I go back to my bunk and I'm starting to get dressed. And about 4 guys come over to me and they look very, very, very serious. And I don't know what to make of it. I'm going, holy shit, is this going to be a problem? And they tell me that you can't ever do what you did. And I'm going, what did I do? What am I guilty of? You cannot get undressed at your bunk and walk to the shower. You have to walk to the shower completely dressed, with your boots on, with your shirt, your pants, your underwear, your socks, everything has to be there. And you get undressed in the shower, which needless to say is like 2 feet by 2 feet. It's a tiny little shower. And that's where you get undressed. And then after you shower, you get dressed in the shower where you just showered, put on all your clothes and walk back to your bunk. Otherwise, that's like a major etiquette flaw and, they'll kill you for that. I thought it was the fucking funniest thing in the world because I didn't know what was going to happen there. And that was what their problem was. All right. This has been great. You are a really smart guy and you have a lot of soul.
Thank you.
And you're wise and divine. You're always great. I'm really lucky to work with you. We want to help Anthony, as I mentioned earlier, in any way we can with your new nonprofit. And just reach out.
I promise, definitely.
To Adrian, and all of us or any of us, we'd love to help you.
Definitely go on the Commissary Club app.
Let me just share a couple of really nice messages that people have written here. Jane, who always writes interesting, well-written comments and questions. She writes, it warms the heart to hear and see Anthony and Divine's response in response to your question about spending time with their daughters, or in your case, your son, Divine, that you would share those emotions, and your own evolution, and how important your kids are to you. I think it was moving to a lot of people. Justin, who is another smart guy, he writes, "This was terrific." There's a link that Amanda put up with some of Anthony's work, the Common Ground Initiative. I read that. It was very, very well written and very interesting. Let's see. Last question that Valerie asked, which is sort of topical and interesting. So let me ask you guys. I'm sorry Seth isn't here because he had experience where he was in prison, where he saw this happening. But she asked, totally off course, what kind of time will R. Kelly have when he goes to prison?
I just answered it in the chat.
What do you think, D? What's going to happen?
He's getting like 30 years, easy.
Right.
Easy.
And what's
30.
that time going to be like for him?
Oh, it's gonna be a hard time. I mean, he's gonna be in protective custody. Number one, because he's a celebrity. Well, number one, because he's because of what he's charged with, sex offenses and all that type of thing, trafficking. Right. Number two, because he's a celebrity, so he's gonna be isolated. His time is gonna be very, very medieval, if you will.
Right. You know, that's the way to put it.
Yeah, he's gonna be medieval this time.
There are those who would do him wrong if they had.
Absolutely. Extort him. Just punk him, like all types of things. It's gonna be brutal for him, but he's getting at least 30 years for the charges he's facing. He's guilty on all of them. That's if not life, but 30 years is life for him.
Right.
What do you think?
40 or 50 at least, right?
What kind of experience is he going to have, Anthony?
It's going to be tough. Like I said, it's going to be a for him mentally, right? Because like Devon just said, like he's looking at 23-1. For a good while, he's not, and then or if he's going to be in protective custody where he can move around with similar people, but he can't go in general population, which and anyone doesn't know, PC is like is jail inside of a jail, so to speak. It's almost equivalent to SHU in some regards. Right. You're segregated from the rest of the population. Yes. And it's going to be rough. Guards might not even treat him. It's going to be countless jokes. And he's going to have to, get through that. So
he's going to have to sing his way through a lot of bullshit. He's going to have to sing his way through a lot of bullshit. They're going to make him sing.
Yeah.
Right. They're going to make him sing. Like he's going to have to sing.
Yep.
Yeah. Literally, figuratively. All right. Anything you would like to share, D, before we go?
No, just like, everybody that's out there, in the audience, please always share Commissary Club, the great work that we're doing. It's all about community. Please share that. We have an app coming out soon. Let people know. Spread the awareness. Yourself, Anthony, please download the app. Get involved with the community. We'd love to have you as an elder statesman, and in the time that you serve, the sharing
stuff that you're writing
in your experience. Anything you're writing, any content.
As well as news.
Share it.
Selling to Freeman.
Right.
Anything you'd like to say before you go? Oh, I know what I want to hear you say. Sorry. We are going to have the yard, as well as all of Commissary Club, on 250,000 tablets in prisons from coast to coast. So we're really excited about that. It's taking a lot longer than we had hoped, but it's happening.
It's happening, right?
Which is to say, here's a chance, because they'll have the opportunity to look at past episodes. What would you like to say to folks who are in prison who might be downloading this episode while they're doing time?
Make the most of your time. Forget Jerry Springer, forget Maury Povich and Who's the Father, forget Love and Hip Hop right now, forget Mob Wives. Get to the library, get to those books, because that's how you get to the bag. That's how you get to the legal bag. Get some skills so you can get gainful employment. A lot of us are in there because of economics. Let's help fix those economics. Mentor with someone who knows investing, and get your mind and your heart right before you get on that pavement. because that pavement is a different animal.
That's great advice.
So throw me
D,
back in.
Yeah.
what would you say, D?
Yo,
What's your
same thing,
best-
man. Just elevate the mind. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Growth mindset, read, study, prepare, proper preparation promotes perfect performance. The 5 P's, I live by them. In
Mhm.
prison, it's all about the plan, man. Set your goals, set the actionable things you need to do to reach those goals. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Take your time. Don't be in a rush. Take your time. Pace yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean? And go for it. Go for it. The world is yours, man.
Right.
Great advice from both of you. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I think that's a good time for us to wrap things up. Divine, it's always a pleasure. You had a big day today. You did a great job
Likewise.
earlier.
We had a big day today. We had a big day. Commissary Club, we ran it. We
rolled
ran it up.
And
Angela Yee,
Anthony,
and Michelle Obama.
you're a total pleasure to have here. And you're funny and you're smart and you're honest. You
Thank you,
know,
brother.
you got a lot of soul, as I said. So please come back, hang out with us. Let's stay in touch because, you know, we'd love to do stuff with you. Everybody who
Thank
has
you.
joined us, thank you so much once again for another week with us. It really just sort of blows our mind that, you know, particularly we see people, same people over and over. It really means an incredible amount to us that you choose to spend your time with us. I would ask that if there's anything that you want to share about what we're doing, things you don't like, things we could do better, things that we should do more of or less of, or anybody who we should have on, or format-wise, or whatever, you know, please reach out to me, richard@commissary.club. That's my email. Please.
Or Divine at commissary.club.
Divine at commissary.club, or Adrian at commissary.club, or Seth or Amanda,
Yeah.
or whatever.
First themes at commissary.club.
Right. It's commissary.club. Please let us know what you think. How do we make this better? Or we got it exactly right, which I would find very surprising. But once again, thank you all for joining us. Have a great week. We'll see you again next week.
Anthony, to the audience,
Thank you.
peace and love.
Peace.